Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as a Kanto gym leader. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 241, Stay Home and Look Pretty. Both Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon were advancing, each following the other's aura. Meanwhile, Wallace had contacted Steven and Cynthia, and the group had agreed to meet in Satopolis City. With the awakening of the two ancient Pokémon and their unchecked expansion of their abilities, the weather patterns across the Hoenn region had become incredibly bizarre, especially within Satopolis City. Half the sky is blazing sun, the other half is pouring rain. The world just keeps getting weirder, Leaf muttered as she observed the stark contrast in weather to the west and east. Indeed, at this moment, Satopolis City itself seemed like a dividing line. To the west, the sky was dark and stormy, while to the east, the sun blazed intensely, so intense that it defied imagination. Just like in the games, Dylan remarked with interest as he observed the split in weather. He was genuinely curious about what would happen in reality when Primal Groudon's desolate land clashed with Primal Kyogre's primordial sea. But just like in the game's cutscenes, one side was heavy rain, the other was scorching sun. According to battle mechanics, Desolate Land, Primordial Sea, and Delta Stream, these three supreme weather abilities could override each other. It all depended on speed. The faster Pokémon would set its weather first, but if the slower one activated its ability afterward, it would override the previous one. These three abilities were far superior to ordinary weather conditions, which couldn't override them, only the three could cancel each other out. But judging from the current situation, since Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre had activated Desolate Land and Primordial Sea simultaneously, neither could suppress the other. No wonder in the Pokémon XY anime's Giant Rock arc, the two didn't even bother using their weather abilities. They must have realized it was pointless. I wonder if Mega Rayquaza can suppress their weather effects. It should be able to, right? Dylan pondered. Delta Stream, Mega Rayquaza's ability, transformed the battlefield into turbulent air currents, removing its flying-type weaknesses. Rayquaza was the natural counter to Groudon and Kyogre. Even in its base form, its airlock ability negated all weather effects, showing its dominance over the two. Just like Zygarde's Aura Break, which nullified the abilities of Xerneas and Yveltal, Rayquaza was naturally designed to suppress Groudon and Kyogre. But after Mega Evolution, airlock changed to Delta Stream. Could it still counteract Desolate Land and Primordial Sea in reality? In the games, all three abilities simply overrode one another. Not that it really mattered, Mega Rayquaza was already strong enough. It was undoubtedly superior to Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. Steven, how's your side? Before long, Steven and Cynthia arrived in Satopolis City, and Wallace immediately inquired about their situation. Apologies, we were intercepted by Aizen. Primal Groudon has already emerged, Cynthia said, somewhat ashamed. Despite being two champion-level trainers, she and Steven had failed to stop Team Magma. Aizen again. Did you manage to capture him? Wallace frowned slightly. No, he was too strong and managed to escape, Steven sighed. However, they did manage to capture Maxie and some Team Magma elites, which was at least a small consolation. And you? Our submarine got caught in a sudden undercurrent while descending, which cost us precious time. We were just a bit too late to stop Archie, Wallace replied with a helpless sigh. And somehow, Zinnia managed to slip away as well. We weren't able to capture her. Zinnia. Steven's expression grew complicated, he no longer knew how to face her. Forget it. The worst has already happened. Let's focus on how to deal with Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre, Steven said, rubbing his temple as a headache began to set in. The top priority now was the two ancient titans. According to legends, Groudon and Kyogre are ancient rivals. They must be heading straight toward each other for battle. Dylan observed the chaotic weather and didn't even need to think. Both Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon were dead set on finding each other and fighting to the death. After all, they were sworn enemies, land versus sea, destined to clash. Throughout Hoenn's history, they had fought countless times over natural energy, making them longtime adversaries. After sharing all their known intel, the group reached a consensus. We can't just stand by and watch. Whether it's primordial sea or desolate land, the longer this goes on, the worse it will be for Hoenn's people. Even if people can take shelter indoors to avoid the heavy rain or the scorching sun, the environment itself won't last, Stephen said gravely. Setopolis City was already being affected. Primal Kyogre's primordial sea had created relentless, torrential rain, causing sea levels to rise and the waters to grow dangerously turbulent. At the same time, Primal Groudon's desolate land was blasting the area with intense sunlight, evaporating large amounts of water. In a way, it was kind of balancing itself out. But in reality, the evaporation rate of the sunlight couldn't keep up with the downpour. If either of these conditions persisted too long, they would cause catastrophic environmental damage. Agreed. We don't know if we can stop them, but we have to try, Cynthia said firmly. Wait. Did that mean they were going to confront Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon head-on? Lily froze in shock. She fully understood how terrifying those two ancient Pokémon were. Their mere abilities alone caused such devastating effects. She genuinely felt that Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon were far stronger than Reshiram and Zekrom. And yet, Cynthia and the others were planning to face them directly? Wallace, besides you, is there anyone else who can break the seal of the Draconid people? Stephen suddenly asked. He knew that Wallace was actually a descendant of the people of the water. I have no idea, Wallace replied, startled. His ancestors had passed down the knowledge to unseal the Sky Pillar, but whether others could do the same, he wasn't sure. Dylan, the person you mentioned earlier, was it Zinnia? Stephen turned to Dylan. You figured it out, huh? Dylan didn't deny it. He sighed and admitted, my mother was part of the Draconid people, but I didn't grow up among them. I know Zinnia, but we're not particularly close. His words contained a loophole, but as long as no one probed too deeply, no one would associate him with Aizen. After all, how could Dylan be running around with Wallace chasing Team Aqua while simultaneously battling Stephen and Cynthia elsewhere? What, did he have a shadow clone jutsu? This was a perfect alibi, completely erasing any possible connection between him and Aizen. So, Zinnia can also unseal the Sky Pillar? That's right. The Sky Pillar was built by the Draconid people to worship Rayquaza. Naturally, they can open its seal. Especially Zinnia, as their chosen successor, Dylan affirmed. In that case. Cynthia glanced at Wallace meaningfully. Wallace's eyelid twitched. Champion Wallace, you might actually be a descendant of the Draconid people, perhaps those who remained behind when the meteor fell 1,000 years ago and later rebranded as the people of the water, Dylan suggested. After all, Setopolis City was the very site where the meteor landed 1,000 years ago, also the battlefield of Groudon and Kyogre. If Zinnia's goal was to summon Rayquaza, then now that Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre have emerged, she's likely already at the Sky Pillar praying for its arrival. If she can actually summon Rayquaza, then I suppose that's not a bad thing, Wallace muttered helplessly. Wallace sighed helplessly. While it was indeed Zinnia who had triggered the emergence of the two ancient titans, if she could summon Rayquaza and put an end to their battle, then so be it. But we can't put all our hopes on Zinnia. Even if the Draconid successor can summon Rayquaza through prayer, there's no guarantee that Rayquaza will acknowledge her. Dylan shook his head. He knew all too well Zinnia's chances of gaining Rayquaza's recognition were slim. If we have a chance to stop Groudon and Kyogre, we need to take it ourselves. Dylan is right. We can't rely entirely on an opponent. No matter what, we need to try, Cynthia agreed. After all, they were league champions and gym leaders, there was no way they could leave everything in the hands of their enemy. Then let's go. Right. With their fighting spirit ignited, Dylan and the others set off. Meanwhile, on the vast open sea, the rain poured relentlessly. Primal Kyogre lowered its massive body slightly, its icy golden eyes locked onto the enormous red figure approaching step by step. Ahead, the dark storm clouds abruptly ended, giving way to blinding, scorching sunlight. With every step Primal Groudon took, charred black land formed beneath its feet. Roar! Primal Kyogre let out a deep, resonant call, but it was answered with a violent, thunderous roar. 1,000 years had passed. And yet... You flightless red lizard. You're still alive? Roar! Fat-headed blue whale. Even if you died, I'd still be kicking just fine. Who the hell are you calling fat-headed? Who the hell are you calling flightless? The tension in the air grew heavier. The so-called flightless and fat-headed fish glared at each other, their eyes blazing with fury. There was no natural energy to fight over this time, but it didn't matter. Their battle didn't need a reason anymore. I swear I'll turn you into dried fish today. You can't even fly, and you think you can take me on? Primal Groudon turned red-hot with rage. If there was one thing it hated most, it was being called flightless. Didn't they know it could leap into the air like a swallow reversal? Damn it! Primal Groudon's entire body began to glow with an intense red light. With a mighty slam of its claws against the ground. Boom! 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 Molten red blades of earth erupted from the ground, surging toward Primal Kyogre at high speed. Precipice Blades! Primal Groudon's signature ground-type move. Primal Kyogre let out a deep rumble that echoed through the sky. Its colossal purple-blue body ascended high, and in front of it, 4 glowing blue energy spheres formed. Rumble! A magma-covered blade, towering dozens of meters high, shot up from the ocean floor, slicing straight toward Primal Kyogre in midair. But with a swift, elegant rotation, Primal Kyogre barely dodged the precipice blades, showcasing its aerial agility flawlessly. Seeing this, Primal Groudon's rage flared even hotter. Showing off? You like showing off, huh? Fine. Fine. Precipice blades again. With another forceful smash of its claws, molten blades of earth surged toward Primal Kyogre once more. But Primal Kyogre was not about to sit idly by. The 4 energy spheres in front of it condensed further, reaching their peak power. The next moment, 4 enormous torrents of water shot toward Primal Groudon. Origin Pulse. Primal Kyogre's signature water-type move. Perhaps because Primordial Sea and Desolate Land were constantly colliding at such close range, their effects were temporarily weakened. The most obvious proof? Primal Kyogre could still use its water-type moves. Primal Groudon, instead of dodging, opened its mouth wide, gathering blinding white energy. Solar Beam. A grass-type move powered instantly by the intense sunlight. The blinding beam of light clashed head-on with Origin Pulse, triggering a massive explosion. The shockwave from the impact was so strong that the ocean beneath them dented inward under the pressure. On a small island near the battlefield, away from the 2 warring titans. Holy hell, that's one intense fight. Dylan clicked his tongue in amusement. Ah, right, he was back to being Dylan again. Alright, it's time to move in, everyone. Steven unclipped a Pokeball from his belt, releasing Metagross. Wallace and Cynthia nodded seriously, summoning their Milotic and Garchomp. Reshiram. Dylan tossed out a Pokeball, revealing the majestic white dragon. Reshiram, I'm counting on you. Go stop Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon. Dylan smiled as he gave his command. Reshiram hesitated, glancing at the raging titans locked in battle. Its draconic eyes suddenly widened in disbelief. Wait, hold on. Sure, Dylan said he'd back him up. But was he seriously expecting a majestic, elegant white dragon like Reshiram to take on those 2 brutes? Did he think Reshiram was Mega Rayquaza or something? And wasn't fighting supposed to be Zekrom and Kyurem's job? Wasn't Reshiram just supposed to stay home and look pretty? Chapter 242 descends. Reshiram was not on board with the idea of stopping Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon's battle. Why in the world would it voluntarily go get beat up? Even though this was its first time encountering the two ancient titans, it could clearly sense their overwhelming power even from a distance. Reshiram was certain that if it interfered, things would not end well for it. "Little girl, Dylan told me to follow you for now, but don't push your luck," Reshiram communicated through telepathy, clearly displeased. Didn't she know that all it had to do back home was strike a few majestic poses every day? Fighting was Zikram and Kuram's job. "But Dylan only entrusted you to me. He's off handling other important matters. You don't want his identity exposed, right? You don't have to go all out, and it's fine if you can't win, but you do have to fight." Leaf tried to reassure Reshiram. Was this holy-looking white dragon really not a match for Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre? Truthfully, Leaf didn't have a clear understanding of how powerful legendary Pokémon really were. But Lily had mentioned that Dylan's strongest Pokémon was Ultra Necrozma, followed by Terrapagos and Kyurem. Though, the power difference between Terrapagos and Kyurem was still uncertain. In its Terra form, Terrapagos wasn't a match for Kyurem. But Dylan had also mentioned that Terrapagos had a stronger form, the Stellar form, so the final ranking remained unknown. For now, though, Kyurem was still the second strongest, while the little turtle sat in third place. Not that Terrapagos minded. Reshiram had nothing to say in response. "You got this, Reshiram." "Terrapea." Lily cheered, and from her shoulder, the dazzling little turtle reached out a tiny paw in encouragement. Yup, Dylan had temporarily placed Terrapagos in Lily's bag. Poor Cosmic had been squished into a corner. Hearing Terrapagos' voice, Reshiram got even more irritated. Why not send that little turtle instead? Getting its beautiful feathers soaked in rain was not an option. Reshiram's pure blue eyes remained cold and dignified, or at least, that's how it appeared to Steven and the others. They had no idea what the white dragon was actually thinking. Sure, it could put on an act, but what if those two reckless brutes actually hit it? So this is the legendary white dragon, Reshiram? It's stunning. Yeah, it's beautiful and super strong. Even Zinnia's Mega Salamence wasn't a match for it. The legendary Dragon of Truth truly lives up to its name. Alright, let's do this. Steven, Cynthia, and Wallace hyped themselves up as they admired Reshiram. And Reshiram? Expressionless. Did they think flattery would make it fight harder? Not happening. Leading the charge, Reshiram soared forward, with Metagross and Garchomp following behind. Milotic swam swiftly in the ocean below, while Wallace and the others rode his Gyarados at the rear. Kyogre. Groudon. Come test our strength. With a dramatic sweep of his white cape, Wallace stood boldly at the front of Gyarados, radiating confidence. And then, Primal Kyogre noticed these little bugs. With a flick of its massive tail, a super surf attack surged forward. A towering tidal wave, dozens of meters high, crashed toward them like a natural disaster. Wallace and the others went pale. To make matters worse, on the other side, Primal Groudon's solar beam just so happened to be heading straight for them as well. Damn Reshiram. Dylan's face darkened. Reshiram's eyes flashed with determination as it conjured a protect barrier, blocking the incoming solar beam. But while it could shield them from the solar beam, the tsunami was another story. Metagross, Meteor Mash. Garchomp, Dragon Rush. Milotic, Surf. Steven, Cynthia, and Wallace immediately commanded their strongest Pokémon. Metagross and Garchomp charged forward, trying to break through the incoming tsunami, while Milotic dived deep and attempted to counter the wave with its own surf. But Milotic's wave wasn't even half the size of Primal Kyogre's. And Metagross and Garchomp? Their attacks barely made a splash in comparison. Damn it! It's too big. Wallace had Gyarados retreat immediately. If they got caught in this, their bodies would probably be reduced to pulp. No! We won't make it out in time, Wallace. I know. Gyarados, dive and use Protect. Steven's expression tightened, and Wallace made a split-second decision. Gyarados dove beneath the water, summoning a green Protect barrier around itself. Boom! The colossal wave crashed down, churning the sea into chaos. Underwater, Garridos was tossed around by the turbulent currents, helplessly drifting with the waves. But once the worst of the impact passed, it struggled its way back toward the surface.
Ha, ha. Stephen, is everyone okay?
Back on the shore, Wallace had lost all his usual elegance, completely drenched and looking like a mess. But his first concern was for the others.
We're fine. Yeah, we got lucky. Stephen, Cynthia, and Dylan shook their heads.
Wait, where's Reshiram? Wallace suddenly froze in shock. Scanning the battlefield, he realized that Reshiram was gone. After blocking Primal Groudon's solar beam, Reshiram was immediately ambushed by Primal Kyogre, Lily explained as she ran over. She had been watching through binoculars, so she saw everything.
Reshiram had barely finished blocking solar beam when Primal Kyogre blasted it from behind with Origin Pulse.
The sheer force of the attack knocked it straight out of the sky. And before it could recover, Primal Groudon's precipice blades struck it again.
Then Reshiram crashed into the ocean. And got swept away.
Yup.
The white dragon was down. Silence. Stephen and the others didn't know what to say. Wait, is that Reshiram? Cynthia squinted and pointed at something floating in the distance. Yeah, that's it, Reshiram. At Dylan's call, the white blob twitched and weakly flapped its wings, struggling to the shore. It was indeed Reshiram.
But the moment it reached land, it gasped for air, completely exhausted.
Little girl, hurry up and recall me. Hearing Reshiram's desperate telepathic plea, Dylan's eye twitched before sighing and pulling out its pokeball. You did great, Reshiram. Get some rest. As Reshiram was recalled, its grumbling didn't stop. I can't handle those two. That fat-headed fish actually sneak-attacked me, how shameless. Reshiram was furious. If it hadn't been ambushed, it was sure it could have fought for at least 300 rounds without falling behind. Yeah, sure, Dylan muttered, rolling his eyes internally. Even Reshiram couldn't hold out. It looks like Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre attack any outsiders who get too close. What do we do now? Cynthia frowned as she recalled Garchomp. Reshiram had been taken out, and they didn't even have a way to counter the tsunami. Let alone stop the battle. The power of the ancient titans was beyond terrifying. We have no choice, Wallace. Stephen and Wallace exchanged a look. We're heading to the Sky Pillar. Cynthia, Dylan, hold the fort here. If anything unexpected happens, contact Officer Jenny. Got it. Cynthia nodded. She knew where they were headed. Let's go. Stephen and Wallace climbed onto Metagross and took off toward the Sky Pillar. Let's hope this works. Cynthia watched them disappear into the distance, sighing inwardly. She had seen a lot on this trip to Hoenn. And she could only hope Stephen and Wallace would succeed. She sincerely hoped that Stephen and Wallace would succeed. Meanwhile, at the Sky Pillar. This towering ruin, located in the southeastern part of Hoenn, had stood for 1,000 years. Ha! We finally made it. 2 salamence descended from the sky. Zinnia jumped down, a wide, excited grin on her face as she gazed up at the imposing structure before her. Come on, Dylan. As someone with the blood of the Draconid people, you also have the right to enter the Sky Pillar. Zinnia lifted the seal on the Sky Pillar and stepped inside with Dylan. Time had taken its toll on the ancient tower. Many areas had weathered away, eroded by the years. But the murals inside remained intact. These murals depicted the 2,000-year history of the Draconid people. Of course, both Dylan and Zinnia were already familiar with these records, so they didn't linger. They made their way straight to the very top, the Dragon's Altar, one of Rayquaza's sanctuaries. Step by step, they ascended the altar. The entire structure was shaped like a massive triangle, representing Delta, the symbol of Rayquaza. When the ruler of the Fiery Land and the king of the Deep Blue Sea awaken, the dragon of the sky shall descend. Dylan stood before the grand open-air altar, glancing toward Zinnia. Ah! Zinnia let out a breath, signaling her salamence to land beside Dylan.
Then, she strode forward into the heart of the altar. 1,000 years had passed. Finally, the true purpose of the dragon's altar would be revealed. Standing at the altar, the super bracelet on Zinnia's wrist shone with an intense green light. Several key stones rested in her hand. Closing her eyes, Zinnia clasped her hands together over her chest, offering a prayer in devotion. The ancient rite of the Draconid people. The ritual itself was simple, but it required absolute faith from the one performing it. 1,000 years ago, in their darkest moment, the Draconid people had prayed to the rainbow meteor, and in response, Rayquaza had descended. Now, 1,000 years later, the Draconid people once again called upon the sky's protector. As Zinnia prayed, a mysterious power began to radiate from the altar, filling the entire space with a brilliant green glow. Unbelievable! Dylan's eyes flickered with fascination. This world was truly full of wonders. Some ancient clans and rituals genuinely had the ability to connect with legendary Pokémon. Just like the Draconid people with Rayquaza. Or like the Kimono girls of Ikrutik City, whose sacred dance could summon Ho and Lugia. As seen in the games. These ancient traditions held real and mysterious power. No one knew how much time had passed. By now, the green aura surrounding Zinnia had reached its peak, radiating intensely. Her right arm, holding the key stones, lifted high into the air. Rayquaza! Her voice echoed like a mighty roar, and the green energy of the altar surged wildly. Roar! A thunderous cry shook the heavens. From the endless sky, a colossal green dragon descended like a meteor. The air shook with its presence. Its massive form, bathed in a faint emerald glow, hovered high above, casting an awe-inspiring shadow. A majestic dragon, its entire body covered in shimmering green scales, exuding an aura of power and authority. It was Rayquaza. Rayquaza! Zinnia's eyes lit up with joy and excitement. It worked! She had succeeded in summoning Rayquaza. To the Draconid people, Rayquaza was not just a Pokémon, it was their dragon god. Every single member of the Draconid clan worshipped Rayquaza. Zinnia was no exception. She had admired and revered Rayquaza her whole life. And now, with her own two eyes, she beheld the great sky dragon before her. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest. Roar! Rayquaza's piercing gaze locked onto Zinnia. Its long, serpentine body glided smoothly through the air, its dragon-like eyes flickering with thought. But as it stared at Zinnia, a ripple of recognition passed through its gaze. It sensed a familiar presence from her. The presence of another successor. Rayquaza was not unfamiliar with this feeling. Was this the inheritor of the previous successor? Come, successor. A deep telepathic voice resonated in Zinnia's mind. Rayquaza understood what was happening. Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre were locked in battle. As a member of Rayquaza's lineage, it was its duty to put a stop to their clash. But for that, it needed to mega-evolve. Rayquaza's species naturally possessed an internal organ that could absorb meteor energy, allowing it to mega-evolve on its own. However, this Rayquaza had yet to learn the technique known as Dragon Ascent, the key to activating its own mega-evolution. So, in order to mega-evolve, it required an alternative method. The same method used years ago when Aster, Zinnia's predecessor, had relied on numerous keystones to forcefully trigger mega-evolution. But would it work this time? Rayquaza's golden eyes bore into Zinnia, gauging her resolve. If it couldn't mega-evolve, then it would have to face Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre in its base form. And Rayquaza seriously doubted that would go well. Those two brutes already in their primal reversion states would not back down. In fact, if it showed up without mega-evolution, there was a high chance they would team up against it, seeking revenge for the beating their ancestors took at the hands of Rayquaza's predecessor. And right now? Rayquaza was only a few thousand years old, just a young Rayquaza. If it went in without mega-evolution, wouldn't it just get bodied by those two? Successor! You better pull this off. Chapter 243, Fight. The only Pokémon in the games that can mega-evolve without a Megastone.
Dylan observed Rayquaza with great interest. As Hoenn's third legendary deity, the Sky Dragon, its power was nothing short of mesmerizing. In the games, Rayquaza was unique, it didn't need a Megastone to Mega Evolve. All it had to do was learn Dragon Ascent. Of course, in reality, other Pokémon had demonstrated the ability to Mega Evolve on their own, like Mewtwo, Latios, and Latias in the movies. However, Dylan suspected that they either had their Megastones embedded in their bodies or had fused with them entirely. As for Kyogre and Groudon, they didn't undergo Mega Evolution, they underwent Primal Reversion, which, according to official lore, represented their true awakened forms, their full power. Aside from the red and blue orbs, natural energy itself could trigger Primal Reversion, which explained why Kyogre and Groudon fought over it. I wonder which Rayquaza this is. No, wait, if it can't Mega Evolve, then it can only be that one. Rayquaza wasn't unique, there were multiple across different timelines. The one from Destiny Deoxys, the Mega Rayquaza from the XY Giant Rock Arc, and even the Black Rayquaza from Hoopa and the Clash of Ages. The Black Rayquaza needed no explanation, while the Mega Rayquaza from the XY Giant Rock Arc was ridiculously strong, defeating both Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre at once. As for the one from Destiny Deoxys? It sure could take a beating. While Dylan was lost in thought, Zinnia was already in motion. Clenching the key stone in her hand, she took a deep breath. The super bracelet on her wrist glowed intensely. Rayquaza's internal organ allowed it to replace a Megastone, meaning it didn't need one, but for a Draconid successor to trigger Mega Evolution, they still needed a key stone. And not just any key stone, a special one. Or, failing that, an overwhelming number of them. Zinnia had chosen the same method Aster had used years ago, brute force with a ton of key stones. Mega Evolve, Rayquaza. A surge of brilliant green light erupted from Zinnia, and Rayquaza's body began to glow in response. It was working. It had to work. Her heart pounded in excitement. If Rayquaza could just Mega Evolve. But then, the radiant colors dimmed. The green aura faded. Rayquaza remained unchanged, standing exactly as before. Zinnia's smile froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. The Keystone's energy dimmed, but Rayquaza had not Mega Evolved. She had failed. Her breath caught in her throat as she staggered back, staring blankly at the still, unmoving Rayquaza. Her gaze fell to the keystone in her trembling hand. Clink! The keystone slipped from her fingers, hitting the stone floor with a sharp, hollow sound. Why? Her face turned deathly pale, her expression dark and empty. A buzzing noise filled her ears, and a splitting pain stabbed through her skull like needles. Why had she failed? She had absolute faith in Rayquaza. She carried the burden of her entire clan's legacy. She had a mission she could not afford to fail. Her vision blurred, her body weakened, and she collapsed onto the floor, her head hanging in defeat. She had used Aster's super bracelet. She had gathered a mountain of keystones. But she had still failed. Why? Was she not devout enough? Were the keystones insufficient? She couldn't comprehend it. What had all her efforts been for? How could she face her people now? Aster was dead. Her clan's hopes and dreams rested on her shoulders. To ensure nothing went wrong, she had manipulated Team Magma and Team Aqua into awakening Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. And yet, she had failed. Her faith and determination began to crumble. Ruawar! Rayquaza watched the breaking girl, its golden eyes flickering with emotion before soaring into the sky. It wasn't entirely surprised that she had failed. After all, Mega Evolution isn't a one-way process. Rayquaza could sense Zinnia's inner turmoil, she carried too much weight, even hatred. And Rayquaza didn't like that. It hadn't outright rejected her command, but it also hadn't fully accepted it. As the successor, stand strong. This is your duty and responsibility. The deep, commanding voice echoed in Zinnia's mind. Her hollow eyes flickered, but when she looked up again, Rayquaza was already gone. Even without Mega Evolution, it still chose to fight. As expected of the Sky Dragon. Dylan stepped forward, gazing at the vanishing streak of green in the sky. Throughout Hoen's history, Rayquaza had always been the one to end the battle between land and sea, a heroic figure. But in truth, Rayquaza's temper wasn't that great. Dylan. I failed. Zinnia's voice was hoarse. I've failed everyone.
Her words trembled with choking sorrow.
She knew she had always known.
Ever since Aster died, her people had placed all their hopes on her. But she had failed them. She wasn't worthy of being their successor. If Rayquaza didn't acknowledge her, then what would happen to her clan's dream?
Yeah. I saw. Dylan sighed softly, crouching down to gently pat Zinnia's shoulder.
Nearby, her Salamence whined in concern, nuzzling against her.
It's okay, Zinnia. There's still hope. Rayquaza did appear, didn't it? Dylan tried to reassure her.
Truth be told, he had expected her to fail from the beginning.
But for now, we need to stay focused. Dylan's gaze darkened. That Rayquaza couldn't mega-evolve. Would it really be able to stop Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre? For an ordinary Rayquaza, that was a tall order. Maybe you should try summoning another one. One that can mega-evolve. Zinnia shook her head weakly. I can't.
Prayers weren't guaranteed to work, and she could only attempt it once per cycle. She had put everything into this one chance, and it had failed.
Then leave it to me. Dylan exhaled. Looked like it was his mess to clean up. Let's go check it out. Okay.
Zinnia was completely lost, her faith shattered beyond repair.
Luckily, she still had Dylan.
As they stepped out of the sky pillar, they ran straight into Steven and Wallace, arriving on Metagross.
Aizen. Zinnia. Wallace's eyes narrowed. But what shocked him was, why did Zinnia look so exhausted, like she had been completely drained? Ah, well, if it isn't Teacher Wallace and Teacher Steven.
Dylan smiled warmly, adjusting his glasses as he eyed the two champions.
Looks like you two weren't completely stupid, you figured out to come here. Aizen, did you summon Rayquaza?
Steven had no interest in arguing with Aizen and asked in a serious tone. When Wallace and I arrived, we saw a green dragon flying toward the battlefield, but we weren't sure if it was Rayquaza. Though they had their suspicions, they couldn't confirm it, which was why they had come to the sky pillar.
That's right, Aizen confirmed. Steven and Wallace exchanged glances, both feeling a wave of relief. This was good.
If Rayquaza had appeared, it would surely be able to stop Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre.
At last, they could breathe easy. Zinnia, you.
With the crisis of Groudon and Kyogre momentarily put aside, Steven turned to Zinnia, his expression growing complicated as if he wanted to say something. But before he could finish, Dylan cut him off.
Zinnia and I need to check things out ourselves, so we won't chat with you two any longer. See you.
Releasing his Hydreigon, Dylan took off with Zinnia, leaving without looking back. Steven watched their departing figures in silence, his heart heavy.
Let's head back too, Wallace said. Though their trip had been in vain, the news that Rayquaza had appeared was enough for now. Meanwhile, at the battlefield of Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre, the two ancient titans were still locked in an intense battle, their clash escalating into close combat. Surprisingly, it was Primal Kyogre that had moved in first. Primal Kyogre surged forward, its entire body surrounded by powerful currents. Liquidation. But Primal Groudon did not flinch.
Raising its massive arms, a bright white light shone from its fists.
Hammer arm. Boom.
Liquidation slammed into Primal Groudon's guard, forcing the massive land titan backward with sheer force.
Primal Kyogre's strength was overwhelming. Yet Primal Groudon was stronger.
Planting its feet firmly, it let out a low growl and exerted all its power, lifting Primal Kyogre off the ground. With an angry roar, it hurled Kyogre through the air, sending it crashing into the ocean with a massive splash.
The next moment, Primal Groudon's mouth gleamed with blinding white energy. Solar beam. Boom!
The massive energy blast struck the point where Primal Kyogre had fallen, the explosion sending shockwaves through the ocean. A towering wave rose up, but before it could fully develop into a tsunami, the waters suddenly calmed.
Primal Kyogre surfaced, its golden eyes narrowing as it gazed warily into the distance.
Primal Groudon also sensed it, lifting its gaze toward the horizon.
This aura! It was that green flying worm.
Both Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre realized it at the same time.
Damn it! It got here this fast?
Frustration burned in their eyes.
They hadn't finished fighting yet.
A streak of green rushed across the sky, coming to a halt just above them.
Is that Rayquaza? Cynthia's eyes shimmered as she looked at the majestic figure hovering in the sky.
There was no doubt about it, this was Hoenn's third ancient legend, the Sky Dragon, Rayquaza.
Beep Rayquaza, Dragon/Flying type, Sky-High Pokemon. Ability, Airlock. Moves, Hyper Beam, Outrage, Hurricane, Fly, Dragon Pulse, Draco Meteor, Giga Impact, Dragon Ascent.
Description: it is said that Rayquaza has lived for hundreds of millions of years in the ozone layer above the clouds. Due to its extreme altitude, its existence remained unknown for a long time.
Rotom Dex dutifully provided its analysis. If Rayquaza is here, then Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre should stop fighting, right? Lily let out a sigh of relief. After all, that's how the legend went. Roar! Rayquaza let out a thunderous dragon roar, its presence overwhelming. But
Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre narrowed their eyes, showing no signs of backing down.
Instead, with a low growl, Primal Groudon attacked first.
Boulders rose from the ground and shot through the air at incredible speed.
Rock slide. And as soon as Primal Groudon made a move, Primal Kyogre followed up instantly.
A chilling blue glow formed at its mouth.
Ice Beam. Attack Rayquaza. Beat down the flying worm. Rayquaza roared in fury, but its reaction was swift.
It darted into the air, dodging the incoming rock slide and ice beam in a single elegant motion. Looking down at its two opponents, Rayquaza's eyes hardened. Just as it had expected, without Mega Evolution, it couldn't intimidate them. Rayquaza's expression turned grim. If that was the case, there was only one solution. Fight. Chapter 244, Join Me. Why are Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre attacking Rayquaza? Lily was utterly shocked. Wasn't Rayquaza supposed to stop Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre just by appearing? Why are you asking me? Who am I supposed to ask? It's not like I'm the real Dylan. Dylan silently complained in her heart. She also found it strange, why wasn't this Rayquaza able to pacify Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre directly? Besides, Leaf felt that this Rayquaza's presence wasn't as terrifying as expected. This Rayquaza, it doesn't seem as strong as I imagined. Cynthia frowned slightly as she gazed at the Rayquaza in the sky. Its aura was indeed powerful, but it wasn't as overwhelming as she had anticipated. To be honest, Cynthia even suspected that this Rayquaza might not be stronger than Primal Groudon or Primal Kyogre. Wait, Reshiram should know. Dylan suddenly had an idea and threw out Reshiram's Pokeball. Once again, Reshiram appeared behind them. Its pure blue eyes gazed at Dylan with a deep, knowing look. What surprised Cynthia was that Reshiram's feathers had returned to their pristine, smooth state. Wait, what? Weren't you just looking half dead and all wet a moment ago? White Dragon, do you know why Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre are attacking Rayquaza? Lily curiously asked Reshiram. Why shouldn't Groudon and Kyogre attack Rayquaza? Reshiram responded confidently, its neutral and clear telepathic voice echoing in the trio's minds. Cynthia's beautiful eyes shimmered. So this is the legendary telepathy. You seem to have misunderstood something. Groudon and Kyogre were never subordinate to Rayquaza. The reason why Rayquaza was able to stop their ancient battle was because it defeated them. Reshiram looked up at the Rayquaza in the sky, its pure blue dragon eyes flickering with a strange light. This Rayquaza is only average in strength, and it hasn't even fully unlocked its potential. There's no way it can stand against Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon.
Reshiram spoke nonchalantly. To be honest, it had always thought that the Rayquaza species was utterly absurd.
1,000 years ago, it had encountered a truly special Rayquaza. Rayquaza was already one of the most gifted legendary Pokémon in the world, and what made it even more ridiculous was that it wasn't a solitary species, it had a clan.
Compared to other legendary Pokémon that formed groups, like the Lugia species, Rayquaza was on another level entirely. Even though they were undoubtedly rare, having multiple Rayquaza was game-changing. Because once Rayquaza Mega evolved, its power would skyrocket instantly.
And yet, 1,000 years ago, Reshiram had seen something even more insane, a black Rayquaza flying across the sky.
A shiny alternate-colored Rayquaza, can you believe that? Ha! Lily was stunned. So, Reshiram, my injuries aren't fully healed yet. I'm going back to rest.
Before anyone could continue, Reshiram cut them off, turned into a flash of white light, and retreated back into its luxury ball, refusing to come out.
It considered itself a peace-loving dragon of truth. Fighting? That wasn't its job.
At home, it was either a decoration piece or a glorified mount, nothing more. High-stakes battles like this were always the responsibility of its big brothers. Even Koraidon, Miraidon, Lunala, or that little turtle would be better suited for this than it was.
Dylan. Lily. Cynthia, confused.jpg. Meanwhile, on the battlefield. Whoa!
Rain poured relentlessly as Primal Kyogre opened its massive mouth, unleashing a fierce blizzard.
A powerful ice-type blizzard.
The raging snowstorm surged forward, freezing raindrops mid-air with a sharp crack sound, turning them into hailstones that plummeted down.
Rayquaza's dragon-like eyes narrowed.
With a swift flick of its long body, a burst of white light erupted from it. Extreme speed.
With extreme speed, Rayquaza dodged Primal Kyogre's blizzard at high velocity. It then dived straight down, slamming hard onto Primal Groudon's back. Bam! Primal Groudon roared in anger.
With a powerful swipe of its massive claws, it lunged at Rayquaza.
But Rayquaza was quick. It struck and immediately retreated, evading the claw attack.
Primal Groudon let out a low growl, and massive boulders materialized in the air, crashing down towards Rayquaza one by one. Rock slide.
Rayquaza maneuvered through the oncoming rocks like a swimming dragon, skillfully avoiding each one.
But in the next instant, the fierce blizzard struck again. Primal Kyogre had launched another attack. Rayquaza quickly soared higher, barely dodging the howling snowstorm. With its superior extreme speed move, Rayquaza was barely holding its own against the relentless assault from Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon.
But any observer could tell this situation wouldn't last long. One wrong move, and Rayquaza would be completely overwhelmed. Beep beep. A sudden ringing broke the tension. Cynthia answered the call. It was Wallace. Miss Cynthia, what's the situation? Rayquaza has arrived, so have Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre retreated? Wallace asked anxiously.
Cynthia's stunning face remained calm, but her gaze was locked on the battlefield where Rayquaza had just failed to break free from a pincer attack.
Primal Groudon had caught Rayquaza's tail. Bam! Bam! Bam bam bam!
Primal Groudon swung Rayquaza wildly, smashing it against the ground left and right over and over again, in a disturbingly rhythmic fashion.
This feels amazing. So satisfying. Primal Groudon roared in excitement. Beating up Rayquaza felt too good. Cynthia, Lily, and Dylan were all dumbfounded.
Rayquaza screeched in pain, but Primal Groudon's sheer strength was overwhelming. With its tail firmly in Primal Groudon's grasp, it had no way to escape.
The repeated slams were causing immense damage, and Rayquaza's struggles were weakening with each hit. Hello? Miss Cynthia? Say something, are you still there? Is the signal bad? Wallace's voice sounded confused and uneasy after the long silence.
I'm here, Mr. Wallace.
I just don't know how to describe it. You'll see when you get here. Cynthia replied heavily. What was she supposed to say?
That Rayquaza did show up,
but was currently getting brutally beaten?
On the other end of the call, Wallace and Stephen were both stunned.
What did that mean? Cynthia's tone suggested that something was very wrong. But that shouldn't be possible. Rayquaza was already there, wasn't it? Metagross, speed up.
Stephen urged his Metagross to accelerate, a heavy feeling settling in his chest.
Clearly, the situation wasn't improving. Elsewhere on the battlefield. As expected, this Rayquaza is no match for Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre.
From atop his Hydreigon, Dylan clicked his tongue as he watched Rayquaza being violently slammed around.
It's my fault. If I could just make Rayquaza Mega Evolve.
Zinnia bit her lip, feeling immense guilt and sorrow at the sight of her revered dragon god being humiliated like this.
No.
I can't just stand by and watch.
Determined, Zinnia gritted her teeth and pulled out Salamance's Pokeball. You don't have the strength to face Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. Leave this to me. Dylan stopped her and took out a luxury ball. Koraidon, use Collision Course.
With a ferocious roar, Koraidon emerged, rapidly spinning into a blazing wheel as it charged straight at Primal Groudon.
This guy. Aizen. Cynthia furrowed her brows. Did something unexpected happen to the plan? The summoned Rayquaza wasn't a match for Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. This must have caught Aizen off guard as well, right? So now he's trying to salvage the situation? But Cynthia hadn't expected Aizen to have such a powerful Pokémon in reserve.
It seemed that back on the island, during their battle with him and Stephen, Aizen had still been holding back.
What a terrifying man. This guy came from Unova. Why wasn't he the Unova champion? Cynthia decided that once this was all over, she would have a good chat with Alder.
They had a decent relationship and had spoken before. Indeed, not as strong as Primal Groudon. Dylan narrowed his eyes slightly at the scene before him. Miraidon's full power crash hadn't been able to overpower Primal Groudon's hammer arm that already said a lot. After undergoing primal reversion, both Groudon and Kyogre were stronger than regular legendary Pokémon. Rayquaza, having finally escaped with its life from Primal Groudon's claws, immediately backed away, putting distance between itself and both Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. It quickly flew to the front of Dylan and Zinnia, panting weakly. Rayquaza glanced at Miraidon. This overwhelming presence was unexpected. Rayquaza had never heard of such a legendary dragon existing in the world. Rayquaza, can you really not Mega Evolve? Or could you call upon your kin? Dylan still held on to a sliver of hope. If this battle could be resolved more easily, that would be ideal. My bond with this inheritor is not suitable. She has already tried. You were there, human. Rayquaza's deep, telepathic voice echoed. As for the situation here, I have already notified my parents, but it will take time for them to arrive. Rayquaza felt rather helpless. It really didn't want to ask its elders for help. There were only 3 Rayquaza in existence, including itself, and dealing with its parents was an immense source of pressure. Especially since its parents were extremely strict. The fact that it still hadn't mastered the art of dragon ascent had already led to endless lectures from them, especially after what happened a few years ago. And now, it was even asking them for help because it couldn't defeat Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. Oh heavens! Rayquaza could already imagine what would happen to it afterward. But compared to getting scolded, resolving this battle between land and sea was the more urgent matter. Zinnia lowered her head, looking somewhat dejected. I see. Dylan's eyes narrowed slightly as he pondered which of his strongest Pokémon to use against Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. In that case, I'll just do it myself. By the way, Rayquaza Zinnia isn't compatible with you, but how about giving me a try? Zinnia was stunned for a moment, but after thinking about it, it wasn't a bad idea. If Dylan could gain Rayquaza's recognition, that would be for the best. You? Rayquaza hesitated. It could sense that Dylan's heart was not entirely transparent. This human had many thoughts in his mind, which Rayquaza didn't particularly like. There was no need to even try. Without true mutual recognition, Rayquaza was certain that even if this human used a large number of keystones, he would still fail to make it Mega Evolve. The only reason Zinnia had succeeded back then was that Rayquaza had acknowledged her as its inheritor from the start. "Human, you are already quite strong," Rayquaza said, glancing at Miraidon. "But I really like you, Rayquaza," Dylan grinned. "How about this, if I can suppress Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre before your elders arrive, you let me become your inheritor?" "How about it?" "This, fine." Rayquaza's dragon eyes widened in surprise as it gazed at Dylan. Where did this guy get his confidence from? Rayquaza carefully tried to sense Dylan's presence. There was indeed something subtly strange about this human's aura. Necrozma and the others had completely suppressed their presence. But suppressing Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre, how could that be easy? This was no joke. If Dylan could actually do it, then such a powerful human becoming its inheritor wouldn't be an issue for Rayquaza. Ah, now that's more like it. Dylan grinned. Now it was time to make his move. On the island, Stephen and Wallace had already arrived. After learning the full situation, the two fell into silence. So what do we do now? Wallace was stunned. He never expected Rayquaza to actually lose against Groudon and Kyogre. It's simple. Suddenly, a clear and confident male voice rang out. Wallace, Stephen, and Cynthia all turned in surprise toward the source, Dylan. "I'll step in, of course." Dylan looked up and smiled at the three of them. Lily's eyes lit up. It was her brother. But where was Leaf? She glanced around but didn't see any sign of her. Gym leader Dylan? "But even Reshiram isn't a match for Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre," Wallace said, puzzled. "No, I don't need Reshiram as my main force. Ideally, Rayquaza would have handled this, but it seems like that particular Rayquaza isn't up to the task." Dylan sighed softly and opened a luxury ball. Reshiram appeared in front of him, its majestic presence exuding a noble, sacred aura. Cynthia was momentarily stunned. She felt like Reshiram's presence had changed somehow. Wait, hadn't Dylan just said that it was too injured to leave its Pokeball? Dylan then took a small turtle-like Pokemon from Lily's bag, mounted Reshiram, and soared into the sky, gazing at Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre in the distance. "Kyurem! Terrapagos!" A thunderous roar echoed as Kyurem rose into the sky, its massive, intimidating form staring down the two ancient titans. Beside Kyurem, Terrapagos shone with a dazzling, crystalline radiance. It had transformed into its terrestrial form. "Ha!" Wallace was completely dumbfounded as he looked at Kyurem and Terrapagos before Reshiram. Wait, was Dylan really this powerful? Looks like Dylan was holding back from the start. Stephen let out a wry smile. He had a feeling this was because of Zinnia. She needed Rayquaza. But now that her summoned Rayquaza couldn't hold the situation together, Dylan had finally decided to step in. Elsewhere, Leaf, now disguised as Dylan, was deep in conversation with a now reinvigorated Zinnia. Rayquaza glanced at the melodious-voiced Dylan, then at the real Dylan, who was riding atop Reshiram, and then at Kyurem and Terrapagos. Both of those Pokemon were incredibly strong. And if Rayquaza's senses weren't wrong, the man riding the white dragon was the same one who had just spoken to it. There was no mistaking it. But how was he changing back and forth like this? 3 question marks seemed to pop up over Rayquaza's head. Were humans always this crafty these days? So, which identity was it supposed to acknowledge as its inheritor? Chapter 245, The Real Boss is Here. You guys can't just keep messing around like this. Dylan adjusted the collar of his shirt, his gaze fixed on the two battling titans, the flightless one and the fat-headed fish. Kyurem! Terrapagos! At Dylan's call, Kyurem let out a domineering roar, and in an instant, crackling lightning coursed through its body. Within a blink, Black Kyurem emerged. At the same time, the radiant glow of Terrapagos in its terrestrial form intensified, surging with overflowing crystalline energy. A deep hum resonated through the battlefield as a dazzling figure took shape. Brilliant, multicolored light shimmered like crystal gems. A massive crystal disk materialized beneath, with elemental symbols floating around it in crystalline form, slowly rotating. Above the disk, Terrapagos in its terrestrial form hovered, glowing like a celestial gem. Higher still, another even more radiant figure shone.
Terrapagos in its stellar form. Wow! What is that? Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement. Is this Terrapagos' final form? It looks incredible. Beep.
Terrapagos, stellar form, type, normal Pokédex classification, terrestrial Pokémon ability, Terraform 0 moves, prismatic cluster, earth power, tri-attack, meteor beam, thunderbolt, flamethrower. Description: according to ancient expedition records, when buried underground, it appears like a star floating in space. The Rotom Pokédex diligently relayed information about stellar Terrapagos. This Terrapagos, it's magnificent. It looks insanely powerful. Wallace stared in awe, mesmerized by the way its crystalline light reflected. Even though the glow was almost blinding if stared at for too long, he didn't care. Kiram, Terrapagos, is Dylan really this strong? Cynthia's eyes flickered with intrigue. A legendary ice dragon from Unova, plus this unknown yet overwhelmingly powerful Terrapagos, and the Reshiram he was riding. Cynthia was genuinely shocked. How had she never heard of such a trainer before? With this level of power, why was he merely a gym leader? He could probably take Lance's champion title in a heartbeat and become the champion of Kanto himself. Stephen fell deep into thought. Terrapagos. Dylan called out to his Pokémon. Ta-le. Terrapagos let out a deep, resonant cry that echoed across the battlefield. A tangible force radiated outward. Stellar form Terrapagos ability, Terraform 0. Both the ocean and the sky fell under its influence. The heavy rain and scorching sunlight that had dominated the battlefield began to dissipate. This was Terraform 0. When Terrapagos reached its stellar form, its sheer power nullified the effects of all weather conditions and terrain. At its current strength, even primordial sea and desolate land were temporarily negated. The downpour and blazing sunlight vanished instantly. The sky returned to a pure, cloudless blue, as clear as a tranquil lake. The once turbulent ocean, previously raging under the influence of primordial sea, gradually calmed. This sudden change left both Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre momentarily stunned. They instinctively attempted to reawaken primordial sea and desolate land, only to realize that their abilities were being suppressed. It really worked. Dylan raised an eyebrow. In stellar form, Terrapagos was, without a doubt, the true third god, the very source of terrestrial energy. Terraform 0 countered all weather and terrain effects, though in reality, the effectiveness of such an ability depended on sheer power. If Terrapagos had been weaker, it wouldn't have been able to nullify primordial sea or desolate land. So strong. Rayquaza gazed at the now clear sky in amazement, its eyes fixed on the radiant stellar Terrapagos. Even its own airlock ability could only negate the effects of weather, it didn't actually dispel them. Only Delta Stream, after Mega Evolution, could override rain and harsh sunlight. Yet this Terrapagos had outright erased the weather effects brought forth by Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. This thing was powerful. Kyurem, you handle Primal Groudon. Black Kyurem let out a deep growl, the turbines on its tail spinning rapidly as brilliant purple-blue energy surged through its body. It charged forward, freeze shock. Even though its opponent wasn't a dragon type, that didn't matter. Black Kyurem wasn't picky. Primal Groudon roared in response, its entire body flaring with red-hot energy as it slammed its massive claws into the ground. From the earth, magma-infused blades erupted one after another, surging toward Kyurem, precipice blades. As Kyurem approached, an enormous, towering magma blade, dozens of meters high, shot up, aiming straight for it. Kyurem didn't hesitate. Freeze shock collided head-on with precipice blades. A deafening explosion rocked the battlefield as the two moves clashed violently, unleashing a massive shockwave. A frigid aura spread outward, freezing the nearby ocean's surface almost instantly. Kyurem's freezing power was among the most formidable in the world. Primal Groudon roared in anger. Lava surged through its precipice blades, and with a final burst, the attack shattered. But from the explosion, Kyurem emerged unscathed, still charging forward. Primal Groudon raised its massive arms, preparing to intercept with Hammer Arm.
Bam! Freeze Shock slammed directly into Primal Groudon's body.
The moment Groudon's claws touched Kyurem's attack, a thin layer of ice instantly coated its arms.
Roar! Primal Groudon howled in rage. Kyurem let out an even louder roar in response.
Cracks spread across the ground beneath Primal Groudon's feet. Kyurem's charge was simply too powerful. A deep, resonant hum filled the air as Primal Kyogre soared higher, preparing to attack Kyurem.
Ice energy gathered in its mouth. It was about to launch Ice Beam.
Though Kyogre and Groudon were constantly at odds, they had an unspoken understanding: whenever an outsider interfered with their battle, they would eliminate the intruder first. Terrapagos, Prismatic Cluster.
Terrapagos, now airborne, let out a cry.
A radiant energy surged from its back, shooting skyward before converging into its crystal core.
Then, Prismatic Cluster. Countless star-like energy blasts rained down, striking Primal Kyogre just as it was about to attack Kyurem.
A chain of explosions filled the sky.
In stellar form, Prismatic Cluster became an untyped area-wide attack. Under the relentless bombardment, Primal Kyogre let out a pained wail, its massive body being pushed backward.
Thunderbolt! Electricity crackled around Terrapagos as a surge of lightning shot toward Primal Kyogre. Primal Kyogre snarled, a serpentine beam of ice energy spiraling toward the Thunderbolt Ice Beam.
The two attacks collided mid-air, golden electricity clashing against icy blue energy in a violent struggle before detonating. It didn't completely overpower it? Dylan raised an eyebrow.
Primal Kyogre's special attack really was monstrous.
Even with stellar form enhancing all of Terrapagos' elemental moves, Thunderbolt hadn't completely crushed Ice Beam. As for Kyurem, Dylan glanced at the battle.
The two behemoths were locked in ferocious close combat, but Kyurem still had the upper hand. After all, close-range brawling was what Black Kyurem did best.
Thunderbolt!
Dylan once again gave an order to Terrapagos, and arcs of electricity crackled across its body. Sensing danger, Primal Kyogre suddenly lunged downward, vanishing beneath the waves. The ocean surface surged violently, and in the blink of an eye, a massive tidal wave, towering high enough to block out the sky, roared toward Terrapagos.
Surf! What a simple trick! Dylan chuckled lightly. Prismatic Cluster.
Terrapagos quickly retreated as energy gathered at the crystal atop its body.
One by one, dazzling star-like projectiles shot forward, bombarding the incoming tsunami. Boom! Deafening explosions echoed across the battlefield as the relentless blasts tore through the tidal wave, causing it to collapse.
From within the dissipating waters, Primal Kyogre emerged, its body shimmering with an aura of swirling currents.
Aqua Break! Thunder! Dylan raised an eyebrow. So Primal Kyogre was really the type to favor close combat.
Then again, it made sense. Despite its reputation as a special attacker, Primal Kyogre's physical power was nothing to scoff at. Terrapagos let out a low hum, golden lightning crackling along its crystalline body.
Boom!
A massive pillar of lightning descended from the sky, striking Primal Kyogre directly. The Sea Titan let out a pained roar as golden electricity surged through its body, paralyzing its movements.
Thunder!
The attack detonated upon impact, and Primal Kyogre, unable to maintain its aqua break, trembled before plummeting toward the sea below.
Watching from the sidelines, Reshiram was practically cheering.
Big brother!
Second brother! You guys are amazing! So strong! Wallace couldn't help but exclaim in awe. It wasn't just Terrapagos.
He turned to glance at Black Kyurem, which was also successfully suppressing Primal Groudon.
Dylan alone was dominating both of these ancient titans. As expected of gym leader Dylan. Steven also sighed in amazement. What an unbelievably powerful trainer.
Hearing the heartfelt admiration from two former Hoenn champions, Lily beamed with pride. My brother is the best.
Is Dylan really this strong?
On the other side, Zinnia stared in disbelief at the sight of Black Kyurem and Terrapagos suppressing Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. Dylan had said he could handle it, but she hadn't taken him seriously.
Yet now, it seemed, he really could handle it? Rayquaza, watching from above, was filled with regret, not because of its deal with Dylan. A legendary like Rayquaza wouldn't go back on its word. The problem was, it had already called for its parents. If it had known this human could defeat the flightless lizard and the fat-headed fish, it wouldn't have needed to do that. Wait. Look over there. Suddenly, Dylan Leaf's disguised form caught sight of something in the distance and pointed in shock. Rayquaza's dragon eyes narrowed. A streak of green light was approaching from the horizon at an insane speed. Roar! A deep, resonant dragon's roar shook the battlefield. Primal Groudon, which had been pinned beneath Black Kyurem's Dragon Claw barrage, suddenly froze. That roar! With newfound strength, Primal Groudon shoved Black Kyurem away and stood tall, its piercing gaze locked onto the incoming green light. Half submerged in the ocean, Primal Kyogre also turned, its golden beast-like eyes fixated on the approaching figure. It's here already? That was fast. Dylan signaled Black Kyurem and Terrapagos to fall back as he turned his gaze toward the sky. The green light came to a halt in the air, revealing its form, a Rayquaza. But this wasn't just any Rayquaza. Its overwhelming draconic aura filled the battlefield, making the air feel suffocatingly heavy. This Rayquaza, it's different from the other one. Cynthia's eyes gleamed with curiosity as she observed the newly arrived dragon. This Rayquaza was clearly larger, stronger, and far more imposing. Compared to the first Rayquaza, its body was noticeably thicker and longer. The golden protrusions on its jaws extended forward, with additional golden streaks trailing from its head, body, and tail, giving it a regal, awe-inspiring appearance. Beep. Rayquaza, Mega Evolution. Type, Dragon/Flying. Pokédex classification, Sky-High Pokémon. Ability, Delta Stream. Moves, Dragon Ascent, Hyper Beam, Dragon Dance, Outrage, Clanging Roar, Wide Destruction. Description, its dominance over the sky's rivals that of a god. When the rulers of land and sea awaken, the dragon of the skies descends. A mega-evolved Rayquaza? Hearing the Rotom Pokédex's report, everyone, including Lily, was left stunned. Rayquaza really did have a mega evolution. Mega Rayquaza looks incredible. Dylan clicked his tongue, his gaze filled with admiration. The way its golden energy ribbons trailed as it moved through the sky, absolutely stunning. This must be the same Rayquaza that subdued Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre 1,000 years ago, Dylan thought to himself. Its overwhelming presence was undeniable. There was no doubt that this Mega Rayquaza was stronger than even Kyurem. With a slow, commanding motion, Mega Rayquaza's serpentine body hovered through the sky. Lowering its fearsome head, it glared coldly at Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre, its aura oppressive beyond belief. Then, as if sensing something, Mega Rayquaza turned its gaze toward the other Rayquaza, the one that had originally been summoned. Its dragon eyes narrowed slightly. Shit! The real Rayquaza, the real boss, just showed up. Rayquaza, Primal Groudon, and Primal Kyogre all felt the same sinking realization. Warning signals flashed in their minds. They were in trouble. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as a Kanto gym leader. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.